when you live in a poor neighborhood, you're living in an area where you have to have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. And when you get a poor education, you are destined to be a poor man and a poor woman the rest of your life. Poor education, you can only work on a poor-paying job. And that poor-paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it's a very vicious cycle. And usually these bad housing conditions result from the fact, as Mr. Gray has pointed out, of absentee landlords, people who are rich and live downtown and let you and I live up here in the shack. Actually, it's a form of 20th century slavery.
Now, if that doesn't catch your attention, I don't know what else will. From what I can perceive is that people have an idea about what goes on in Mississippi, and those things are based on stereotypes or based on information that they have gathered from different sources. Now, this reminds me of a similar case, which is communism. People have never actually read the Communist Manifesto, yet they believe firmly that they know everything there is to know about it. And Mississippi is a very similar case. People who have never visited Mississippi and who have no idea what actually goes on here think that they know what Mississippi is and why it ranks so low.
This is in Mississippi. It is the poorest state in our union. We are not making fun of anybody. She did not seek out people who look like what some people would say rednecks. And she said if you took any of the footage we didn't use, it would look just like the footage we did use. And by the way, all these people said they knew they were going to be on this show, and they think I'm going to hell. So I'm going to show you the video, and just know that we're going to send Alexander Pelosi in the future to the inner city to get the views of people who are not probably the same political stripe. But here we are in Mississippi with Alexander Pelosi's video.
Hey, Bill, I'm here in Mississippi, the poorest state in America, which is also the most conservative state in our union.
So why is Mississippi so conservative?
Well, you're in the heart of the Bible Belt. We believe in family. We believe in Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Whoever gets elected needs to be family orientated.
God should come into his mind in everything that he does.
You never liked the president, did you?
Never, and never will.
Why not?
One thing, his name's Obama.
This is America. Our president should be American, not Muslim.
I don't even like it. When I see him on TV, I turn it off. I don't like it.
Is it because he's black?
No, it's not because he's black, because he's a half-breed. He's black too, but he's a half-breed.
I guess I'm a little prejudiced.
Are you? You don't like black people?
Not much.
Why not?
Just don't.
What is this? Where are we?
We're in the state of Mississippi. I don't care for the government. They don't show me anything.
You get food stamps.
Yeah, but I think I deserve food stamps. I have no employment.
I hate Obamacare. I think it's retarded and pointless.
But a lot of people in Mississippi need health care.
Yeah. Back when I was growing up and when my parents were growing up and my grandparents were growing up, we didn't have all that and people still made it. And back then, people pulled their own weight. They didn't sit around waiting for everyone else to take care of them.
So you don't care about the economy?
No, just take care of yourself. You put God back in the saddle, it'll all be okay.
So something's not working here.
That's
Voting
right.
Republican hasn't worked for you.
But it could.
But it hasn't.
It hasn't, but it could.
Why is the poorest state the most conservative state?
We would rather go broke and die hungry than to give up our moral beliefs.
I feel like that voting God and voting faith is more important to me than voting for free money or voting for a handout.
I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, even if I go broke doing it.
We're not going to be pushed over. We lost the war. That's true. But we're not going to be pushed around. We're not going to back down from what we believe. And like the tag on the front of my truck says, the South will rise again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bill Mayer, for giving us an inaccurate description of what Mississippi really is. And let's take a look at a better side of Mississippi.
There is only one place on earth that is the most Southern place. True Southern culture has only one mother. It's authentic and sincere. It's about textures, aromas, sights, and sounds. Defined, appreciated, and preserved by generations past, present, and future. Mississippi was, is, and always will be the true South. Come find your true South through rich experience and diverse expression, unparalleled culture, and unmatchable cuisine, exhilarating games of chance and sports of skill, crossroads of history, and landscapes of opportunities. Mississippi. A musical incantation that inspires bright faces of wonder, mouth-watering grins of anticipation, and understanding nods of reverence. Savor the true delicacies. Meet the true originals. Master your true game. There is true grandeur and true simplicity. Discover your true inspiration. Places frozen in time, so that we fondly remember, so that we never forget. Witness the true miracles. This is Mississippi. Find your true South.
Now that you've seen this commercial, I hope that you're more willing to come and find your true South here in Mississippi. So, in this movie, I will focus on three main issues that Mississippi has. Education, healthcare, and marijuana. And what better way of explaining everything by drawing a chart? Alright, in order for us to understand why Mississippi has such troubles with education, health, and marijuana, we will have to look at the structure of our society here in Mississippi. Mississippi is made up of the people. Mississippi has a state government. Mississippi has also corporations. Mississippi also has local news. And Mississippi is strongly religious, hence we are in the Bible Belt. Now let's look at some of the relations/influences these things will have on each other. The people obviously put legislatures into office, so they have a pretty strong influence on the government, and the government has a strong influence of the people. Now the corporations are to some extent under the control of the government, and the government to some extent is controlled by the corporations. Now the people of Mississippi are religious people, so religion has a definite influence on the people, and the people drive religion. Now the news is here to interpret all of these connections and all those happenings together on the TV. So the news definitely has an influence on the people. And the news, the media, they're essentially a corporation. So news and corporations are pretty much the same thing. Now, when it comes to religion and government, there is separation of church and state. So there shouldn't be a way for religion to influence our government. But because we are in a Bible Belt and we are in a Christian nation, so to say, there's always a way around that of religion influencing government. And part of that is because people are religious. Therefore, the government also has to be religious in order to satisfy the people. One of the easiest ways to influence anybody or anything in this world is with money. So let's check this out. Now let's look at the flow of money. The people pay taxes, so their money goes directly to the government, and the government provides services for the people, so the government also spends money on the people. Now, the corporations are also being taxed by the government, but then again the government gives corporation tax breaks and sometimes corporate welfare. Therefore, the government also spends money on corporations. Now, people, because we're charitable, we spend our money on religion, and we expect religion to pay us back with services, such as homeless shelters and summer feedings. Now, the government has decided not to tax religion, therefore, the government is, in a way, also paying religion. Now, the news makes their money through advertisement, as the people watch, and that comes from the corporations. This is a very basic chart of money flow in Mississippi. Since we're already talking about money, let's check this out.
We hear all the time about the American right advocating small government, and they criticize those who receive government benefits. They call them takers. They are receiving these handouts, which they have not earned. They're in favor of people doing it themselves, pulling themselves up by the bootstraps rather than relying on others. And of course, they're in favor of paying less taxes and not seeing their taxes redistributed, evil redistribution to those who have not earned it. In fact, this was a big theme of the 2012 presidential campaign. Remember Mitt Romney talking about makers and takers and saying about 47% of the country are takers or makers, or I don't remember what it was, but not to be completely clear, about half the country he thought were pathetic lowlives who just received stuff from the government and that was it, and there was no way to fix them. This is according to consumer finance site Wallet Hub. They crunched the federal tax and spending data, and then they ranked states. What states are most dependent on Uncle Sam and which states are least dependent on Uncle Sam. And as you can see in this map that's over my shoulder if you're watching today, green states are the least dependent. In other words, they pay in way more to the government than they get back. They are, in other words, subsidizing other states. At the same time, the red states on the map, which happen to also be red states politically when it comes to voting for Republicans, are the most dependent. The states that are taking the most from the federal government and really from the blue states are Mississippi and New Mexico. Both states take in about $3 in federal spending for every dollar they contribute. Look at the redistribution of wealth that is keeping the red states afloat.
And this was David Packman. He is a quality resource when it comes to information and news, and I encourage all of my viewers to go out and subscribe to his YouTube channel in order for you to get more educated about the world we live in and maybe about yourself. Alright, let's begin with education.
Tonight, the biggest teacher strike in America in a generation is underway. 29,000 teachers out on the picket lines. 350,000 American students shut out of school.
It's the largest teacher strike this country has seen in more than 2 decades. 29,000 union members strong, refusing to go to work until they get what they want.
We are fighting for dignity and respect and for a fair contract. We say fight back!
This is a strike of choice, and it's the wrong choice for our children, and it's not necessary.
City officials launched an emergency plan, opening 144 schools for a half day to serve kids breakfast, lunch, and keep them busy. We visited Crown Elementary, where students played games all morning instead of taking classes.
Are you upset that you're not able to be learning in the classroom today?
Yeah, because, well, how are we going to get our education without learning?
The strike has left thousands of parents in the lurch. Janice Thompson scrambled to rearrange her schedule to pick her twins up early. The strike, combined with the city's soaring murder rate, is what most bothers her.
Here we go again. Mainstream news making a connection between teachers on strike and high murder rate. Making the teachers look like the bad guys in this case, when anybody I've ever asked completely and honestly said that teachers are underpaid.
Delegates, so my name is Mr. Mark Gassinger. I've been teaching, this is my 23rd year.
How easy would you say your job is?
How easy is it? I'd say it's not too easy. I think the thing about teaching, the misconception again, is the time that you spend on your craft outside of school.
How important is your education to you?
Well, obviously, even more so today than it was 41 years ago. But I think it's critical. And to me, it's extremely important, not only to me, but to the other youth of our country. With the way the economy is today, I think college education is crucial. Back then, in the 60s and early 70s, it was important. I just did not appreciate how important it was.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way. Mississippi, of course, has been a state that has been handicapped by its history of racial discrimination and segregation. And for years, African American students did not get the same opportunity to study and acquire good education that the white students did. In the last several decades, however, that has changed, and now we have, I think it is fair to say, equal opportunity afforded children of all races, but there is still a gap between those who did not have that opportunity for a long time. So we're still making up for that deficiency. But I think now it is fair to say that Mississippi is doing its best to be competitive, to raise its standards, to make sure that every child is adequately educated.
Okay, I'm Representative Jeremy Anderson, representing District 110, which is Moss Point and Pascagoula, for the Mississippi House of Representatives.
I've heard that you're one of the youngest out there.
Yes.
Well, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, I'm the youngest in Mississippi history, and I'm currently the youngest serving in the country.
Does your job pay for the amount of work that you do?
Lord, no. And my family thinks I'm insane for teaching, to be honest with you. To keep teachers in the future, they're going to have to pay them more. I don't see the best and brightest going into teaching. Like I said, my family, I wouldn't say they're disappointed that you're a teacher, but it's a surprise, and they almost think like you're going into the priesthood. It's a nice thing you're doing, but you know, really, is this what you want to do? If you go to a party and you meet a lot of nice women, and you tell them a teacher that's nice, but you're not the guy I'm going to marry. I don't need a lot of money. I would like to have a little more.
Growing up in the public school system, the phrase "I teach because teaching is my passion, not because of the money," is very true. And I see that in my position now, being able to see the numbers, the actual dollar figure per teacher for some school districts, and you see that definitely is true, because we expect our teachers to be these super teachers, these superhero teachers, and we pay them, pennies on the dollar.
Teachers have had to fight year in and year out for raises. To me, which is incomprehensible, that a teacher, whether it's a high school teacher or a college professor, should be paid equivalent to their skill set, just like in any other state. Here in Mississippi, judges and teachers seem to be they are the whipping boy. They're underpaid, and as a result of that, you don't get the quality of the teaching. But again, what I said earlier, there's a direct parallel between poverty and the deficits in our educational system.
Teachers ought to be at a financially rewarded level at the same basis as we lawyers are, as doctors are, as other professions are. The teaching profession, I think, is certainly among the one or two or three most important professions in the world. And surely we can find the means of making those who participate in that profession adequately compensated. They will never make as much money as entrepreneurs who invest a lot of their own capital in their businesses, but at least we can have them on a par with the other great professions, law and medicine and engineering. The education profession ought to be on a parity with all of those professions.
Now, how about the budget of the education department?
Well, I mean, for the state, I know they rarely will fund it adequately. They have the budget battle every year, and I don't think for what they want the schools to do, they fund it. They give it enough money.
The budget-wise for education is, of course, set by the legislature in Mississippi. In my opinion, when you're allocating money, towards education, you're allocating public dollars for the public sector of education for young people. So basically, you're taking an investment in the future of young people. So I think government plays a very important role in not only funding education, but kind of shaping the direction they want the educational system to work and how they want it to work for the people that we represent as legislators.
And I disagree with some of our legislators that our educational process has really taken a turn for the better. I don't think it has. See, I have a belief that there is a definite parallel between the ineffectiveness of our educational system and poverty. I think there's a direct relationship, because you have so many families, and particularly the minority groups, individuals that grew up without a family structure. Either their mama or their aunt or their grandmother raised them. Those individuals didn't have the wherewithal to provide them with some of the niceties of life. So their only chance of making money was either in professional sports or to drop out of school and get wrapped into the drugs. And I think our educational system, I think we put blinders on in Mississippi when we talk about our educational system. I don't think there's really been the kind of move that we need.
We cannot talk about the future without investing in education.
Right, okay.
And the investments that we make now are the ones that will pay off in the future.
Right.
So that old axiom that you by cutting back on education now, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. We get paid back for not investing in education with high welfare and public health costs that because we did not educate people adequately, we have those costs that are added to the cost of living in the future.
Are the lowest performing students really the reason Mississippi is last place in education? We can tell by looking at the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. It's true that low-income students, both black and white, score poorly on the NAEP. But what happens when we look at high-income students in Mississippi? Even more affluent students are still performing below the standard of the rest of the country. Our middle and high-income students aren't even close to average, and they're only 3% better than last place. Our scores for black students are some of the worst in the nation. 88% of black students in Mississippi can't read at grade level in 4th grade. Only West Virginia has white students who perform worse on the NAEP than Mississippi. The highest performing group of students in Mississippi are wealthier white students. How do they do compared to high-income white students across America? Not good at all. We're in 46th place when you look only at the students in Mississippi who have the most resources to be successful. Our schools aren't failing because of low-performing students. They're failing because everyone is performing near the bottom compared to the rest of America.
Well, thank you for those fresh ideas. Now, let's look at the educational paradigm.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffer this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and paediatricians think there is such a thing. But it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out. And on the same whimsical basis, and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising holdings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? Boring stuff. At school, for the most part. It seems to me it's not a coincidence, totally, that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. People start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe. It's a fictitious epidemic. If you think of it, the arts, and I don't say this exclusively of the arts, I think it's also true of science and of maths, but I say about the arts particularly because they are the victims of this mentality currently, particularly. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak, when you're present in the current moment, when you're resonating with the excitement of this thing that you're experiencing, when you are fully alive. An anesthetic is when you shut your senses off and deaden yourself to what's happening. And a lot of these drugs are that. We're getting our children through education by anesthetizing them. And I think we should be doing the exact opposite. We shouldn't be putting them asleep. We should be waking them up to what they have inside of themselves. But the model we have is this. I believe we have a system of education that is modeled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organized on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialized into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? It's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. You know what I mean? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality. It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardized testing and standardized curricula. And it's about standardization. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking. Published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity for creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, there are tests for this. One kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, Could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? You know, like, does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? You know. Now, there are tests for this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, ages of 8 to 10. What do you think? 50? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things have happened to these kids as they've grown up. A lot. But one of the most important things that happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated. You know, they've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer, it's at the back. And don't look. And don't copy, because that's cheating. I mean, outside schools, that's called collaboration, you know, but inside schools. Now, this isn't because teachers want it this way, it's just because it happens that way. It's because it's in the gene pool of education. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational, and see it for what it is, a myth. Secondly, we have to recognize that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomize people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment. And thirdly, it's crucially about the culture of our institutions, the habits of the institution and the habitats that they occupy.
Now here are the US presidents giving us some very, very great responses to what we should do with our education.
And they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips.
Stop funding prisons over education.
Listen to me, I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual
education, but my daughter will.
The United States and our allies have prevailed.
College education will be accessible for everyone.
A new sense of common purpose. Yes, we can.
Eliminate poverty in America.
All right, let's talk about health.
America, land of the free, home of the brave. You see, from the moment you're born till the moment you die, there's one thing bred into the mind of every American. This country's bigger, it's better, and if people don't like it, they can get the hell out. See, it all boils down to one thing. America is exceptional. And guess what? We are. At least when it comes to being bigger. Let's be honest, guys, America's fat as hell, with 35% of the population officially classified as obese. And if you don't believe me, you've probably never been to the old country buffet feeding trough or peopleofwalmart.com. While the U.S. has held the #1 heavyweight title among populous nations for several years, Mexico is close to tying. So eat up, folks, because we got to keep that top spot secure. See, guys, we can back up the claim to exceptionalism. It's just in the worst of ways, which is a shame, considering that we're also the wealthiest country in the world in terms of GDP. See, in the categories that the U.S. should be #1, we're not. This year, the U.S. ranked 16th in literacy in the industrialized world, 27th in life expectancy for all countries, 69th in infant mortality, 27th in median household income, and 61st in protecting the environment. So, if you want to be a gun-toting, toting, war-loving, energy-wasting, pill-popping fat ass, then come to America, because here, well, that just makes you exceptional.
And that was Abby Martin with her brainwash update. Nothing better than seeing a woman with that much passion for her country, huh? Back to the local news of Mississippi.
A 7th grader eating a salad from a school cafeteria. Others picking fresh fruit. Gym class, 30 minutes every day. These are the changes Mississippi is making after being named #1 in childhood obesity. And the students are learning why better choices are necessary.
Stay healthy, do things that will help you later on in life when you're older.
5 years ago, this is what the cafeteria used to serve. White bread, canned fruit, lots of sauces. Thank you. Nowadays, it's whole grains, 1% milk, and fresh fruit and vegetables.
95% of the school is on free or reduced lunches, but the subsidies are too low to buy more fresh produce. So Byhalia gets some vegetables from the high school greenhouse. That's difficult for a state like Mississippi, where high-calorie foods have been the tradition for generations. Plus, some citizens live in areas called food deserts, where traditional grocery stores are miles away. This is the only store within walking distance for Bobby McDaniel, and it offers few fresh vegetables.
You can't get them if you don't raise them in your garden. You can't get them here. 5'3".
School nurse Emily Hurdle calculates BMI, body mass index. Then she counsels students on why it should be lower.
You always think of high blood pressure, diabetes, and these are things that we don't ever want to have to treat. It would be so much better if we could prevent them.
1, 2, 3.
In addition to counting calories, Mississippi law recently mandated 30 minutes of physical activity each day. Coach Henry Hood says he's fighting a new generation that doesn't know how to play.
When I was a child, we had to go out and play. We didn't have the video games and the Wii sets that we stayed inside and played with. So our recess, our outlet was playing and hunting, fishing, doing all those things.
And the only thing I got out of this was that legislatures have decided to pass a law making it mandatory for children to have exercise in elementary schools for at least 30 minutes. That's not a bad start, but to me, obesity is caused by the problem of money, as in the lack of money, and giving people not the best options in food, therefore leading to obesity. Now, and I'm pretty sure if I can figure this out, smarter people, legislatures and presidents even, have realized why we are obese the way we are. After all, Mississippi is the poorest state and also the fattest state, and 30 minutes of exercise in elementary schools is not going to cut it. And it might sound like a good distraction and pretending, yes, we are doing something about your obesity problem, but not really. Now, Mississippi does also have very bad health. Do you think we could use education to improve Mississippi's health?
I think the quality of health care is directly related to education, not only to the skill and availability of trained health professionals, doctors and nurses and hospital employees, but in terms of averting crises in health, of having people understand by virtue of their education what it means to have a healthy lifestyle. And so that is a part of the process of education, of teaching people how to live in ways that will be conducive to their good health.
No, all right. Do you think the education in Mississippi would have a direct effect on the health of the people?
Yes, I do. And the reason I say that, and I've got a sort of a skewed thought process about it. Mm-hmm. You have so many individuals that say, and I'm not just focusing on the minority group because there are Caucasians that fall in this category. quit school. What? Because of poverty. They had to go out and work. You have individuals 60 and 65, 70 years old doing manual labor. Some in their 50s doing manual labor, been doing manual labor since they were 18 years old. Whereas if they could have progressed through the educational system, they could have had a job that, number one, would not have been so, have such an impact on their health. They could have afforded to buy the kind of foods they need to eat. And instead they all go to McDonald's or Wendy's or wherever because that's what they have to do. So there's no question about it that because of the fact we're at the lower end of the economic spectrum, we have so many people that have poor health because of their financial situation. I think there's a definite corollary.
Okay. Can we use education to improve Mississippi's health?
Oh yeah, oh sure. I think, as you stated before, there's certainly a correlation, and even some part of success is physical. For a lot of jobs, you have to be physically fit. When you feel when you're physically fit, you feel mentally better about yourself. You creates a positive outlook, and I think we can. I mean, but again, that's something that's fallen to the schools. I think we could do what we can, whether it's with the school lunches or more exercise, keep the PE in, educate the kids. But still, that training from home is more important than whatever we tell them a lot of times.
Ladies and gents, let's move on to marijuana.
My name is Allie Calagero. I'm currently a music major, but I'm changing to business.
Do you smoke weed?
No, I used to.
How easy is it for you to get some drugs right now?
Very, very easy.
Do you know anybody that smokes weed?
Yes, I do.
Are the punishments equal to the crime when it comes to marijuana?
No, I think that they're too strict.
My name is Demetrius. My name is Jonathan. My name is Brady.
I'm Taylor Stokes, and I'm from East Central.
Do you smoke weed?
I have before.
I do not.
All right. And do you know anybody that does smoke weed?
Yes.
Okay. So do you think we should change the charges of marijuana? Do you think we should make them stricter? We should loosen the leash a little bit? What do you guys think?
I think we should loosen or legalize marijuana.
I don't even smoke it, but it would definitely help if it was just legalized.
I think it would help our economy.
Right. So do you think most young people your age are for legalization of marijuana?
Yes.
Most people are.
Right. So when you guys in 20 years, because you guys said you're around 20, in 20 years when you guys are 40, do you think Mississippi will have legal marijuana?
No. Maybe.
Possibly.
My name is Angelica Asbury. I am 20 years old. I'm from Goshen, Mississippi.
How easy is it for you to get some weed?
Pretty easy if I wanted to.
So are the laws regarding marijuana fair?
At this time, no.
You know our Justice Department very well, I could say. Is our justice system fair, and is it fair to everyone?
You know, the best way to answer that question is our justice system is not perfect, but it is as good, if not better, than any justice system we have in any other country. Yes, there are flaws in it. There's deficits in our justice system. But when you compare it to the justice systems in other countries, we've got an excellent justice system. I think there are many areas that can be improvements made. I've never really had to voice an opinion about it. I know that it's been legalized in other states. I cannot ever see it being legalized in Mississippi, simply because of the mindset of some of our legislators.
I don't agree with as far as currently legalizing marijuana, honestly, for recreational use, you could say. But I'm a criminal justice major by degree, and and I look at things as it relates to the law. So when you talk about marijuana, and you're talking about it being, I guess, a tool used to prey on a certain demographic of people, or however you want to put it, the only thing I can truly say about the marijuana issue is, as a representative for this district, I feel comfortable with saying that I am open to looking at that issue more in depth towards the future. However, as it relates now, with it being legal in Mississippi, my stance on it is to make sure that the charge for a marijuana dosage or usage, or however you want to put it, relates to the punishment. You know, we don't want an ounce of marijuana, someone sentenced for 40 years for an ounce of marijuana. We want to make sure that the punishment fits the crime, pretty much. And I think that that's more so what we should be concerned about right now as it relates to marijuana is our criminal justice system preying on minorities or certain demographics based on that particular drug as it relates to sentencing guidelines. I think that that's more of a pressing issue now versus the legalization of it. It was making sure that when someone is caught with that, with it being legal, the sentence for them matches their crime, pretty much.
Alright, so
I think Mississippi could be a little bit more progressive. We're looking at other states to see how this particular issue is handled, but we're looking at other states to see how they handle the issue. I'm not sure how Mississippi would take to that, but as Mississippi becomes a more progressive Mississippi, I think you'll hear more about that particular issue.
Well, something old is new again. A new electric car made of hemp is being developed by a group of Canadian companies working in conjunction with the Canadian government. The Kestrel will be prototyped and tested this fall by Calgary-based Motive Industries Incorporated, a high-tech auto manufacturer. Now, this compact car, which seats 4, will have a top speed of 90 kilometers or about 56 miles an hour and a range of up to 100 miles before needing to be recharged. The car's body will be made of an impact-resistant composite material produced from mats of, you guessed it, hemp. The hemp is also being grown in Canada. Now, Henry Ford was the first to build a car made of hemp fiber and resin back in the 1930s. That was more than half a century ago, but the idea wasn't developed much further as cannabis prohibition went into effect in 1937 and car manufacturers favored other materials such as steel. But in the last 25 years, fiberglass and carbon fiber-based composites have gained popularity as materials for automobiles because they are strong and lighter weight. But producing composites from glass or carbon requires intense heat and multiple chemical processes, making them very energy intensive. In contrast, plant-based fibers like hemp is grown in a field using only the energy of the sun. As a structural material, hemp is about twice the strength of other plant fibers. It doesn't require much water or pesticide, and it also produces a high yield and grows well in Canada. Nathan Armstrong, president of Motive Industries Incorporated, adds, and I quote, "It's illegal to grow cannabis in the U.S., so it actually gives Canada a bit of a market advantage," end quote. The U.S. does, however, allow the import of processed hemp. We here at Cannabis Planet applaud the effort of the Canadian government and their private industry partners. But we can't help but question the wisdom of our own government for continuing to prohibit cannabis, particularly in these trying financial times. This amazing plant can be used as a food, fuel, fiber, and medicine. It creates new jobs, promotes industry, and generates new tax revenues. It's time for the politicians in Washington to wake up and smell the, well, you know where I'm going with this. For Cannabis Planet, I'm Pat Finnerty. Now make it a great evening.
Do you want to see that car?
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, It contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
Now, the conservative state that we are, I really think we could benefit from a new cash crop called hemp and a new industry. Apart from legalized hemp, I also think that Mississippi could benefit from legalized marijuana. We can look at some examples, as in Colorado. Let's take a look.
Marijuana businesses have, up until now, not been allowed to set up legal bank accounts with major banks since the federal government still considers the sale of marijuana to be illegal. Major banks have turned away pot distributors for fear of being implicated as money launderers, hilarious, if they offer traditional banking services to these new businesses. This has prompted 6 Colorado lawmakers to ask the federal government for swift action on this issue and allow marijuana-related businesses to access to basic banking.
Yeah, again, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, I'm so excited about the legalization, and I think you just told me this morning that Wisconsin, the legislator in Wisconsin is now thinking about introducing, and there's been, I think New Hampshire is talking about it. It's going like wildfire across the country.
Everybody's gonna.
Why is it going like wildfire across the country? Whoa, because the retail sale of marijuana in Colorado basically made almost $5 million in its first week of legalization in less than 40 shops. 40 shops made $5 million in 1 week.
Yeah.
People want their people want their weed. They want their guns. They're ready to go. You know,
and people don't have an issue with it. I think that's the thing, is there's a market. These aren't just, I think what they're seeing in Colorado. I mean, in Colorado, the first guy who walked in the door was a former soldier with PTSD, and that it's the different kind of ideals.
It blows my mind, however, that the banks are like, oh, we don't want your money.
Now let's see how things are going with our current mindset about cannabis, hemp, and marijuana.
Here are 50 white guys. Here are 50 black guys. Here's how many white guys can expect to go to prison in their lifetime. The chances amount to 1 out of 17. Now here's how many black guys can expect the same thing. The chances are 1 out of 3. Why? Lots of reasons. It's complicated, but one thing is clear. There's racial bias at every level of the criminal justice system. When blacks and whites commit the same kind of crimes, blacks are more likely to be arrested. Once arrested, they're more likely to be convicted. Once convicted, they're more likely to serve longer sentences. Look at the numbers in America's so-called war on drugs. About 14% of American drug users are black, as are about a quarter of drug sellers. Yet blacks are 34% of the people arrested for drug crimes. And those convicted of drug crimes, 46% are black. By the time we factor in sentencing, there are actually more black drug offenders than white ones in state prison and in federal prison. In the end, the incarceration rate for drug crimes is 10 times higher for blacks than it is for whites. These are the facts. Racial disparity in America's war on drugs is one big reason that 1 out of 3 black men can expect to go to prison in their lifetime.
Now, this war on drugs has had its negative effects on the people who are not involved with drugs.
So I'm driving down the street with my 4-year-old nephew. He knocking back a juice box, me a Snapple. Today, y'all, we are doing manly shit. I love watching the way his mind works. He asks a million questions. Uncle, why is the sky blue? Uncle, how do cars go? Uncle, why don't dogs talk? Uncle, uncle, uncle. He asks uncle, uncle, uncle. He asks uncle, 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 as if his voice box is a warped record. I try my best to answer every question I do. I say it's because the way the sun lights up the outer space is because engines make the wheels go. It's because their minds aren't quite like ours. I say yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe. We laugh. He smiles, looks out the window, spots a cop car, drops his seat and says, "Oh man, Uncle, 5-0, we gotta hide." I'll be honest. I'm not happy with the way we raise our black boys. Don't like the fact that he learned to hide from the cops well before he knew how to read. Angrier that his survival depends more on his ability to deal with authorities than it does his own literacy. Get up, I yell at him. In this car, in this family, we are not afraid of the law. I wonder if he can hear the uncertainty in my voice. Is today the day he learns that Uncle is willing to lie to him? That I'm more human than I am hero. We both know the truth is far more complex than do not hide. Both know too many black boys who disappeared, names lost, know too many Trayvon Martins, Oscar Grants, and Abner Louimas, know too many Sean Bells and Amadou Diallos, know too well that we are the hard-boiled sons of Emmett Till still. We both know it's not about whether or not the shooter is racist. It's about how poor black boys are treated as problems well before we're treated as people. Black boys in this country cannot afford to play cops and robbers if we're always considered the latter. Don't have the luxuries of playing war if we're already in one. Where I'm from, seeing cop cars drive down the street feels a lot like low-flying planes in New York City. Where I'm from, routine traffic stops are more like minefields. Any wrong move could very well mean your life. And how do I look my nephew in his apple face and tell him to be strong when we both know black boys who are murdered every day simply for standing up for themselves? I take him by the hand, I say be strong. I tell him, I say be smart. Be kind and polite. Know your laws. Be aware of how quickly your hand moves to pocket for wallet or ID. Be more aware of how quickly an officer's hand moves to holster for gun. Be black. Be a boy. Have fun. Because this world will force you to become a man far more quickly than you'll ever have to need to. He lets go of my hand, but Uncle, he asks, Uncle, what happens if the cop is really mean? And it scares me to know that he, like so many other black boys, is getting ready for a war I can't prepare him for.
Well, this is where our paths will separate. I hope you learned something from this video, and I hope that you will appreciate the world a little bit more, and I hope that you have a better understanding of what goes on in Mississippi when it comes to education, health, and marijuana. The truth is a lot more complex than I could ever possibly show you in video, and I can only encourage you to come visit us.
There is only one place on earth that is the most Southern place. True Southern culture has only one mother. It's authentic and sincere. It's about textures, aromas, sights, and sounds. Defined, appreciated, and preserved by generations past, present, and future. Mississippi was, is, and always will be the true South. Come find your true South through rich experience and diverse expression, unparalleled culture, and unmatchable cuisine. Exhilarating games of chance and sports of skill, crossroads of history, and landscapes of opportunities. Discover your true inspiration. Places frozen in time, so that we fondly remember, so that we never forget. Witness the true miracles. This is Mississippi. Find your true South.